which also means it's time to bring in this guy and find out what cup of coffee he is on. What cup of coffee are you on, sir?
What's up, guys? Jared, my guy, good to see you. SDH family, we're on cup number 2. It says that I'm up early, although I went to sleep late
last night.
Yeah, yeah. So another 2 to 3 hour rest day, but when it's SDH on the phone, I got to pick up.
So, takeaways from last night in your version of the Open Cup. It was kind of hairy for that first 45 minutes, and then you put the pedal down and got a couple of goals in the 60s and the 80s to get on top 2-1.
Yeah, it was a struggle, and there was a couple of moments where I started doubting if the team was going to be able to do it. For starters, Brad Smetzer kind of under-delivered on some of the things he said the day prior. He had mentioned that he was going to have a few more starters in the bench because he knew the importance behind the game, and that those players would be a surprise to a lot of us. And when you looked at that bench, it didn't seem like there was a lot of offensive power. Jackson Reagan and Alex Roldan were the two guys that maybe he was referring to. And when you go down a goal and you looked at that bench, you were like, man, who's the guy that's going to come in and be a spark plug and kind of change things up? So he had to put Alex Roldan at holding mid and hope that he can make something happen. Fortunately for the home team, with a little bit of credit to them and their relentlessness from continuing to just push the ball forward, and a little help from the opposition there in Phoenix Rising, kind of being really exhausted, being really gassed, and just deciding to go into a deep block, I think allowed Seattle to get more comfortable, get higher up the field, and just put a lot of balls in prime scoring positions that ultimately led to a penalty, which was a handball as well. And I say as well because the goal for Phoenix Rising came out of a bad tackle from Lenny Leva in the box that led to a PK. But in that second part of the second half, because of Sounders' relentlessness, they were also able to take advantage of a handball that Alex Rodon puts away, and then a beautiful goal that ends the giving them the win yesterday. And I'm trying to Kosa is the name of the young kid. He has a tough name. And he did a great job yesterday. He played right back position. He got pushed a line higher later down the game, and then he gets the game-winning goal. So all in all, it was a struggle. All in all, there were some good performances. Georgie, once again, is fun to watch. He's an exciting kid, but maybe he was not even as sharp as he was maybe the game before, but he still makes things happen. And I think that's the best part about Georgie is that doesn't matter how it happens, how he does it. Sometimes you feel like he's going to lose the ball, but he gets it right back and he just makes things happen. And that's always a good thing for the Seattle team. The bad things, Jonathan Bell went down with another hamstring injury for this Sounders team. It seems like every week there's a new injury. Danny Masovsky really struggled in front of goal. I mean, there were 3 or 4 clear chances in front of goal where you think an experienced guy that was brought in to be the guy behind the guy, either for Jordan or for Raul, would put some of those chances away. But he does do other things in terms of pressing and moving and effort that, it's always commendable. But that's kind of in a nutshell what we saw from this Sounders team yesterday. One thing that I will say, atmosphere fantastic, 3,300 plus at Starfire, always fun, always magic. That part was awesome.
Kalani Kosa Rienzi.
There you go. Kalani Kosi. Yes.
Kalani Kosa Rienzi, midfielder and defender, played at Berkeley. So he's from Berkeley, went to UW.
UW, yeah.
So he's a local dude there and can play either in the back or in the middle. and got the goal for you in the 88th to get the Duke. But now you advance, and we were discussing the matchups and the survivors in the final 8, where Atlanta United gets Indy 11, and they are the second choice for home sides when it comes to quarters and semis. If Sporting Kansas City wins their matchup, then the winner of Atlanta and Indy goes to Sporting, whether it's an Overland Park or Children's Mercy, we don't know. And Seattle has to go to Sacramento to take on the Republic. And we've been talking about USL Championship, folks, and how you cannot sit there and dismiss what you've been seeing from USL Championship teams. We got to see it with Charleston Battery, the other undefeated team in USL Championship. You got to see it with Phoenix Rising, who won the championship last year. And next up, it's a matchup in Sacramento against the Republic, who also have a big 0 in the loss column to start their year, man. You can't sleep on USL Championship teams, especially this late in the tournament.
No, and they're a scarier team in my opinion, right? I mean, I did watch that whole San Jose game, and you can tell what they do right and how quick they are in transition. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I know exactly who Kieran Phillips is, but that guy had a rocket on his back, and he was giving San Jose the GBGBs. I mean, it was just, they could not get a hold of this guy. Defensively, San Jose was just very passive and poor and non-physical. But this team's ability to stay true to what they were hoping to get along and play, right? Very direct. We're going to make sure that we win those secondary balls. A guy like Roro, who's a legend in USL Championship, helping you out in the midfield. And then in overtime, San Jose scores. And instead of you kind of putting your head down, you put it all together. And in the second half of overtime, you go back-to-back goals. I mean, within a couple of minutes, Luchi Gonzalez, after the game, just was, I don't know, at all of what happened. He's like, man, if we could take back those 5 minutes of that second half of the overtime, things would have been differently. Well, yeah, that's not what you want to hear from your coach, man. I mean, you should have definitely seen that coming. You should have kept that intensity up. But this team is interesting, man, and it does worry me. And I would think that Brian will look at this game and look at both games, right? What I did against this Phoenix Rising team and what I need to do against Sacramento. And you might want to put a little bit more tools in that shed when it comes to your bench. Maybe Jordan Morris, maybe Albert Rusnak that's really struggled. So maybe you get him some minutes. Maybe Pedro La Vega if he needs more minutes. I mean, I don't know. Whatever it is, you're going to have to do more to get through the Sacramento Republic side.
Jarrett for Niko, Thursdays with Niko.
As the person who made the terrible decision to emotionally invest in San Jose years ago, and who still carries that burden because they don't learn from their mistakes. How much of what San Jose's gone through this year is a regression for Luchi versus them not restocking that roster after last year, or guys backsliding? What went wrong? Because like last year, San Jose looked somewhere between like a sneaky good team and a functionally good team, and that has not been the case.
Oh, I'm getting some static there.
It's his cell phone close to his wireless. That's what happens.
Oh, okay. I thought it was me. I was looking around. All right. Yeah, no, I don't see. It's hard for me to call it a regression when the front office decided that you were going to have the same coach with the same tactics with less talent on the field. I understand that you bring in I don't want to call him Baby Maradona, but the relative of Maradona, the great nephew or whatever, and he's a really good player, and he's shown it. He's shined. But rotating this team as hard as you did against Sacramento was odd, because if there's something this team is going to have is depth, and you immediately saw it. So I don't think that there's a regression, because I feel like the attacking movements are there because we've seen what Pellegrino has done for this squad and how he's starting to get on track. I think that whenever there are those associations in the midfield, Ibobusi looks better, Espinosa looks better, obviously Hernandez Lopez looks better. So all in all, I do think that the issue San Jose has had this season is more about the talent and what Lucci has to work with rather than his tactics or his motivational aspects or whatever it is that we're looking in a coach. Because again, I don't think that it'd be crazy to think that regardless of how this team started, they are there in when it comes to getting to the playoffs. And whenever you make it to the playoffs in MLS, anything can happen. And they could win a couple of games. It could be interesting. So I think Lucci is still very much in line with what the expectations were when we saw this roster, when we saw what they did last season. So I wouldn't call it a regression, in my opinion.
Who has regressed in the Western Conference, in your opinion?
Ooh, that's a good question. Obviously, and I'd be a hypocrite if I said that the Sounders are not in that conversation. They have definitely regressed simply on being a team that put a little bit of fear on you. And whenever you saw that Rafe Green jersey in your town, in your stadium, or when you're playing at Lumen Field, you'd feel a little bit different. And that alone has been a regression. I talked to Pedro Vite after the Sounders 1-1 draw here at home, a draw that Seattle should have won, a draw that they were the better team for the bigger parts of that game, where they started with the lead, where they did a lot of things correctly defensively, making sure that Robbie Gold was not connected to the game, denying service from White. And even then, you were unable to get that win at home. And that's not something that you used to see from this Sounders team. So there is the regression. So I have to put the Seattle Sounders in it. I think Portland regressed a lot from last season to the first, I don't know, eighth of the season, to the very first couple of games of the season where they were able to get some results, to now, it just seems like it's falling apart there for our friend Naval. It really has looked like, regardless of the roster, regardless of the players, regardless of how things are played out, that Minnesota game was tough to watch in the way it all played out, missed opportunities, lack of goals. So I think Portland has regressed. But the biggest one and probably the biggest disappointment for me has been FC Dallas. I mean, we had them at the top of the top five in the Western Conference coming into the season. With LAFC and RSL and the Sounders, I mean, you think that they were going to be up there. And from style of play to, I know they dealt with some injuries, and actually a lot of injuries, but this team just has not looked good. They haven't been able to really get things going. It seems like there's no belief from the players in what Stevis wants to do. And when I saw Gary Smith be let go, I thought one of the next guys that was going to be on that boat was Niko Stevis. So I think that's still to be decided. But I think Dallas probably the team that's regressed the most in the Western Conference.
Jarrett, go for it. Or
I'm here. Leave me alone. I guess as far as let's take it in the other direction for the West, then of where it kind of stands right now, and you can do it irrespective of record if you want to. But who's been the biggest surprise for you out there?
Probably the biggest surprise might be the LA Galaxy. You could go with Minnesota because of the changes and ultimately the way things have played out for Minnesota are probably very surprising. But I think the LA Galaxy, I did not expect them to be as dominant starting off. I didn't expect Gabriel and Paintsel to adapt so quickly. I had my doubts initially about Vanny, I'm not going to lie. And I know that I'm a little bit of a fan because he was extremely nice last time he came here to Seattle, and I mean a fan in terms of his personality and how gracious he was. So it was a surprise. There were so many holes. There were so many question marks. Can they move on from certain players? Is that fan base going to immediately come back and be as supportive as they have been in the past? And his old work well for the LA Galaxy. They still one of the contenders in the West. They have obviously their issues defensively, and that's where they're most vulnerable. And they got to figure some things out when it comes to that part of the game. But it seems like they've gained all the confidence. They have a lot of depth. They have a lot of options to play with, whether they go in with Fagundes or not, whether they play with Peck or not, where they're going to stash Pencil at. Ricky's been amazing. So I think for me, the biggest surprise on how good they've been has been the LA Galaxy. But honorable mention, absolutely Minnesota. Did not expect them to be second of the West this far into the season, and I would definitely not expect them doing that if you told me that Reynoso was going to play no games, that he was going to continue to be a problem, that he was going to be moved on to Cholos or whatever's been reported. So I just think that Minnesota, with how everything's played out, Pookie on the bench, and Ramsey just switching to a 5-man backline and just playing more direct, and it's worked and it's looked good. I think that's definitely an honorable mention for the Western Conference.
I was going to ask you if you'd seen the snippet of video or still that came out with Reynoso, and it's disturbing, the video / picture that came out with Reynoso, where there's a bag. There's some things inside the bag. There's another individual who's holding stacks of legal tender, and there's a gun that's also a part of that picture. That's some disturbing stuff.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's something that he's never been able to get away from. And, I've gotten into several discussions this week about it because, to me, it is a waste of God-given talent. It is a waste of opportunities from a guy that could be so much more, that has so much more to give, that could provide for those people and get them out of the way. And I was kind of not attacked, but people are like, well, he comes from a bad situation. It's not that he's a waste of talent. It's just that he grew up in a bad environment. And look, as someone that grew up very humble and in not the greatest neighborhoods in Bogota, I can tell you that ultimately it's a decision, and it's about deciding where you want to go to. And I don't have the talent or the opportunities that Bebelo Reynoso have had in his time. And it's not a judgment thing, but it's just a situation where he just puts things in perspectives of what it could have been of a guy like Reynoso if he was to have a better idea of where he wanted to be and a better circle around him, and deciding who those in that circle are the negative impact people there, and if he was to move on. So it's just unfortunate because the reality is that a lot of the best athletes in any sport, including soccer, have come from unfortunate situations and bad neighborhoods, and it's all about the decisions we make as we grow older. And there is no excuse for Reynoso and everything he's done and the way his career has kind of spiraled in the last couple of years.
Jarrett, with Niko, before we get into Cliffhanger and the weekend that will be in Major League Soccer.
I guess, I was going to ask about the Reynoso thing, but we're already there, so we could just let Sleeping Dogs lie with it. Mm-hmm. I guess looking forward into your setup out there in Seattle coming up with a lot going on in the summer. I wanted to, because we talked about it a lot with the guys who are going to be missing this summer for Atlanta, for international duty, for Olympics, whatever it might be. What's it looking like? What's it looking like out in Seattle with that roster of guys you might be missing?
Yeah, I mean,
that didn't sound good, man.
Yeah, it's because I don't want to discredit some of the things Seattle has been able to do, and I don't want to dismiss the fact that the amount of injuries that have happened to this team are incredible. I mean, the fact that every week there's a new one. Josh Atencio last week, he's still out. He's not making the trip to St. Louis, according to what Brian kind of indicated. So I understand that there's a whole bunch of injuries for this team. But I talked to Paul Tenorio when he was here for the Vancouver game. Check that conversation with him in Pulso Sports. But we had the exact same conclusion that this is the team that is going to ultimately decide your faith in MLS. Because if you're betting on the summer window, you're just not doing it right because of the amount of games that whatever player you bring in is going to have able impact to do in that amount of time. 9 games, 8 games, whatever, however long it takes you. So this is the team that's going to really decide where you're going to be at. And when you look at the Seattle Sounders team, yes, with Pedro La Vega on the field, they're just different. Pedro is as advertised. He was a spark in the 15 minutes he played against Vancouver. He was resourceful. He got 2 shots on the post. I mean, he was dangerous. He was fun to watch. But ultimately, it goes back to what the ceiling of this team is. And I just think it's playoffs. I just don't think that it goes beyond that. I would be surprised if that's not the case. Whenever the players that were supposed to carry the load for your team and the players that you ultimately categorized as the guys that were going to make or break your team are not performing, it's just a bad situation. And I don't see when or how they're going to play any better. Maybe with Pedro, they will play better, but that's still to be seen. So the Albert Rusnak has been a problem this season. He hasn't performed, hasn't been good. Jordan Morris, can he get his confidence back? Because, look, I am still a guy that yesterday at Starfire, people are coming to me and they're like, hey, when are they going to bench Jordan Morris? Come on, man. Like, you got to see it my way. You know, he's just not the guy anymore. And what I would tell those people is like, look, man, I still don't think we or this Sounders team should bench Jordan Morris because he does a whole bunch of other things defensively. I know that he's struggling in front of goal. I know his body language tells you that he's frustrated, but he's still giving you 100%. And I don't think at this point in time there's a better option on that side. Maybe with Pedro, we could move things around, but right now that's not the case. So to your point, Jared, I think that this team is going to continue to have issues, is going to continue to struggle. They're going to have good games, but the lack of consistency is going to be there, and the lack of quality and impactful players is going to be the determining factor that will keep this team a playoff contender, but not a title contender. And let me briefly just talk about Kalani Koza, because I feel like I ruined his name, and that's unfair to the kid that yesterday he's been on a radar. Just like Georgie, Jeremiah Oshan of Sounder Heart and myself have really liked this kid because he's a baller, and he's so physical. He has all his athletic ability, but he's willing to learn every single time. Last night, not just the goal, not the patience, the control inside the 18 to, as a player that maybe you think more a couple of lines back defensively, his composure, control in the 18 to put the ball where he did just shows you how versatile he is. He doesn't have a first team contract, but he's a guy that I could see definitely next season getting a contract because of his versatility. So I want to applaud and praise and highlight the player that he is and the performance he had yesterday, because he was a MVP candidate last night, and he really did absolutely everything. Doesn't matter where they put him, he did great. So I just wanted to put that out there in parentheses because I had ruined his name, and I think that's a guy that your audience should be listening for, should be watching out for.
All right, time to play Cliffhanger to wrap it up for a Thursday with Thursdays with Niko at El Rolo and W on the 280 character app. Let's start it off top of the order. Atlanta United, 7:30 Eastern time on Saturday night. LAFC coming to town, but we made the point. Atlanta United rotated, but it was rotating to younger players and second-team players. LAFC played their big guns most of the match against Loudoun United. Bouanga played 80. Bogish played full. Ilie was pulled after 23 because of an injury. Frankly, we don't know what these lineups are going to look like in this one. Atlanta United favored at Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't think I touch it. I will say that this LAFC team does seem to understand how to manage each game. And I feel like a lot of the things that they do offensively and the way they push the ball could put Atlanta in some tough situations. I saw that Nashville game, and there's still just some issues there for Gonzalo. And I feel like Cherundolo is a guy that understands where your most vulnerable positions are to either lose the ball or push the ball. So I think this was going to be difficult for LAFC. Again, I'm not going to touch it at all when it comes to the juice boxes, but I think LAFC can really make Atlanta very uncomfortable in this game.
Other 7:30 matchup I wanted to focus on, Toronto FC, underdog at home as FC Cincinnati visits. FC Cincinnati's a plus 138. Toronto's a plus 187. Your draw's a plus 242.
Ooh, I like that draw. Look, Toronto is so interesting to me, and I've said it here a couple of times. I don't need to repeat it, but I feel like there's simplistic way to make sure that every player on that field is doing what they're good at. Put Insigne and take away a lot of defensive necessities and put him in certain places. Allow Bernardeschi to be Bernardeschi and push as high as he wants and move inside, outside, wherever he goes. Him and his dreadlocks. I mean, he just whatever it is that he has, the braids. Just allow him to be him. Davy Flores, man, is just unbelievable. And I need to make sure that we understand something about Toronto. The magic, the fragrance, the beauty of the cooking, it's Italian. But the guy doing all of the mixing, he's Honduran. And David Flores, he was only given one assist or officially one assist, but he was involved in 4 of the 5 goals. And just the way he distributes, the way he understands when he's got to pause, when he has to go. So good defensively, so smart. His ability to cut down spaces. So Toronto could give Cincinnati some issues. I like the draw there.
All right, and then one last matchup. Obviously, it's yours. It's all caps, hosting Seattle. St. Louis City, 8:30 Eastern time at a plus 119. Your draw is a plus 248. Seattle coming off Open Cup is a plus 217 on the road at City Park.
Ooh, those are some good numbers there for Seattle. Look, man, there's no way that I'm going to sit here with a straight face and tell you to put your juice boxes on Seattle. I really can't. I feel like they have been playing with fire. They got that big win at Portland, but after that, they kind of went back to some of the same issues. Even yesterday, and we asked Brian that he kind of got away with one a little bit because things looked grim there for a second. So I just don't see them winning at San Luis. I really don't. I think All for City will get this game. I think that Seattle will drop the points. Pedro La Vega is still not going to be starter in this one, I don't think. Maybe he is. But it takes some time to just get in game rhythm and do certain things. I don't think he'll start this one, but even if he does, and even if he's still a spark plug of the bench, I don't know if it's enough to beat a good San Luis team. They've had their own issues. I get it. I understand it. But I feel like at home, San Luis, this is one where Seattle might not be able to do enough. And you are a little thin in the center of the field. No Josh Atencio. I think Christian's done a really good job playing that pivot with JP. But what happens if you need to make a move? And we know Brian believes Christian's best position is that right wing. So if he needs to push that, he's over going to come back. I mean, there's just some question marks in terms of what this team can do against Vancouver. First 15 minutes, great movement, great ability to take on players, the right passes at the right times. And then after that, the foot just came off the accelerator. Against St. Louis, you're going to have to keep that on. And I'm not sure if they can. And maybe Brian will surprise me and he will do things to make sure that they control tempo of this game and they're the protagonist and they put St. Louis on the back heels. But I just don't like the likelihood of it. And that's why I think St. Louis will win it.
All right. What's going on at Soccer Bar and Pulso Sports, my friend?
All right. Well, Pulso Sports, I already kind of gave you that quick plug on the Paul Tenorio conversation. Check that out. A great guy. Someone that's recognized around MLS, talked about the Sounders ceiling, what could happen in the summer, what could not happen, or is likely not to happen in the summer. So go ahead and check that out. Today I'll be leaving here right after Soccer Bar and do a little quick visiting of the training facility because the team is going to do a very light training today and then travel. So we'll try to talk to some of the players and see if we get anything else on Pulso Sports. And at Soccer Bar, of course, we'll talk more about these Open Cup games, talk about where some other MLS teams can maybe struggle and fall on their face, flat on their face in the next round of this Open Cup. We'll talk about MLS upcoming weeks. So go ahead and check that out here in about 40 minutes.
Yes, about 40 minutes or so. As always, my friend, great to have you here on a Thursday, and enjoy the rest of your morning. Cup of coffee number 2 with the Rave Green mug, and we'll catch up with you next week.